wield it.
Yeah, totally. Thad Cox, thank
Hello.
you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's a little role reversal, I think, isn't it? You've done so well, like interviewing all of us, and now it's your turn to have the spotlight focused on you.
Yeah, it's no coincidence I'm last. I might have been putting it off a bit and just make sure everyone else has done their bit, sort of thing. So, yeah, it's no, I'm really looking forward to it. So, thank you very much.
Well, I tell you what, let's just start off so that everyone's clear. Tell me about who you are and what do you do and who do you serve? And maybe those three questions are too structured for the scope of what you do, but in your own words, just introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things that I say it jokingly, but I probably monetize some form of mental illness because I've bounced around careers a lot. So that means starting in graphic design at Kingston Uni, going into advertising, then going into football coaching, thinking I could do that, getting my qualifications through the London FA, and then running a hotel with a restaurant with a Michelin star, and then starting my own branding studio, which is a lot of things, admittedly. So I know that can sound scary, but I think throughout it all, the thing that I've always come back to, which I really like, is the ideas and the creativity and probably the hospitality angle. So whatever you're doing, I always feel it's always about the people, and it's always trying to give them something that makes them happy or emotional, kind of thing. So in branding, I think that's the opportunity. If you can leverage your creativity to surprise and delight people, you've always got a chance of kind of making really loyal customers. And that's kind of what seemed to work in wherever I was working. If you can apply creativity to it and do something different, I think people appreciate it.
Yeah, it sounds like, an industry like hospitality and whether that's, working in your hotel or the restaurant, you get to know people quite well.
Yes, I think definitely doing the football coaching really helped. Like I really loved that. I think I probably became addicted to it in the end. And I thought, as I said, I was going to do it professionally, but I found people fascinating. It's so you're reading autobiographies. It's not that you're actively trying to lead people, but it is fascinating how you're trying to sort of keep them happy because they do a better job. I was saying to someone the other day, the bit I always liked in Big Brother was when Judy James came on, who was the body language expert, and she could kind of break down what was really happening. I always found that really fascinating. And I think, especially in hospitality, the more empathy you can show and the more understanding, everyone's much happier that way. So it's very simple, but I think it's sometimes overlooked. We expect it in hospitality. We don't expect it elsewhere. And so I think that's a massive advantage. If you can apply that kind of thinking, it benefits both you. If you look after your people, they do a better job. Everything about it is about how you treat people.
Yeah, and what do you feel like what do you think the key thing that is desired by most people?
I think it's I think it's probably just to be noticed a bit and appreciated. I think it's that thing of you'd be amazed at. So like the other day, I really enjoy mentoring freelancers. I probably should have put that in there. But for example, I was doing a session on process and what a turnkey business is. And I made the point of saying, Starbucks, Costa, McDonald's, they're all turnkey businesses. You can go in there is a process there, they all follow. So I wanted to find an example. So in the local Starbucks where I live, I asked the guy, have you got a manual I can take a photo of to prove it? And he was really nice. And he's like, yeah, sure, of course, really friendly. And then when I left, I just said, look, I think you're doing a brilliant job. It's super busy in here. And I can see you've got new people, but you haven't lost your rag. And I said, I get frustrated listening to some of the orders coming in because they're so fiddly. So how you maintain your calm and keep everyone on side and keep a huge range of people happy is astonishing. So I said, look, I know how hard it is to find people like that, and I wanted to let you know. And he was like, oh, thank you. Oh my God, that's so nice to hear. And you kind of go, God, you're really deprived of positivity. And it was kind of, I think it means if you can just be nice to people and show you notice them, I think that's a lot of it. It doesn't take much, but it's super important. I know that that's a real skill I learned in football coaching, because if the person on the ball or who isn't directly involved, you've got to keep them motivated. So a lot of it is trying to explain to them how they're contributing indirectly and that you're spotting it. So it's a balance. You can't always be the nice guy that's always really positive, but you have to at least notice what they're doing and tell them you appreciate it.
Yeah, I suppose so much of what you do, that's like the key element, sort of going from graphic design, which sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds very much like you and the computer, to sort of the sort of leveraging up to this creative world where that's almost secondary. You have to really understand the clients and that acknowledgement of the nuances of each brand that make them unique, so that not only can you interpret it the way they interpret it, but you can elevate it to a different playing field, so to speak.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think when I was doing my degree in graphic design, I really liked it, but I found I really liked the ideas aspect. So I wanted to learn advertising. I loved the graphic design, but found it quite restrictive. So again, you can produce something that looks visually really impressive, but if there's no real idea that lights you up, I don't think it lands in the same way. So learning that when you go into advertising, that your thinking is the most valuable currency, how you think and how you see the world. I've carried that forward. And I think, so when you do branding, it is exactly what you say. It's taking the time to understand the client and what they're trying to achieve, understanding their team, who works for them, why do they like it, what do they get out of it, and their customers. And then within the context of their industry, it's a lot of work to do that, but it's you learn so much more. So I'm more informed. So it makes my job easier because I'm going to spot things that other people won't, and that's going to lead to hopefully quite often better ideas, better identities, better work that everyone's more aligned by. And that's really just taking the time to talk to people. And I probably think now, looking back, I didn't do enough of that in the agency. You receive your brief and that's what you work on. But I think that, if you just bother to talk to the customers or the team, that's where you pick up so much information. And I think so that's a key part of it, is just listening to people. And also they'll say things that you want to dig deeper on that you'll miss if you're trying to do research or you're looking online or, you're not doing it. So understanding that's massive.
I mean, you've worked with some massive clients like Kellogg's and McDonald's, as you say. Like, what if you've and now you're in this space where you really work with individuals and help them see their brand almost to what it could be. What do you find are the I suppose my first part of this question is, what do you find are the similarities between the two, or are there?
I think, well, with McDonald's and those big brands, I was lucky enough to work with them. I mean, people like Nintendo and everything is like a real dream, because you grow up with those brands and you love them. The similarity is probably that they're trying to gain the affection and attention of the end customer, whoever that is. It's harder to have that impact because McDonald's is more scared because it's such a big organization. So they're kind of terrified of getting anything wrong. So they're more hesitant. I think that the mistake probably would be to lose sight of who's this for and become too subjective in the process. And often remembering who are we doing it for? Who are we trying to reach? It makes everything much more aligned. It becomes less subjective. And so for me, not only knowing that, but being able to speak to those people is really, really helpful. I know that I was thinking about this recently. So probably where that was more relevant was I did a campaign in New York a few years ago for New York Dermatology Group. And it was an interesting thing because it was quite an unusual brief. I was flown in as a kind of creative director, and we had to do this, the campaign across the Walgreens building in Times Square. So it's like 27 different panels of creative in a really busy place. And I remember sitting in the meeting and I'd done the graphics with the other guy who was working for them. And it was kind of just a bit boring. And it made sense because it was like, it looks nice. But I just thought it was such a wasted opportunity. Like, this is just going to be wallpaper. Times Square is hectic. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody's going to notice. And so you begin to dig around. You go, so what is this campaign all about? What are we doing? And it turns out it was for this sun cream. And it's very expensive, like $100 a bottle sun cream. But all of the profits were going to a foundation. And I was like, okay, so what does the foundation do? How long have you been doing it? And it turns out for years they've been running this foundation, not talking about it. And the foundation had been helping people with albinism, effectively save their lives. And so in places like Rwanda, if you have albinism, you are literally hunted by witch doctors for your limbs. So it's a really serious thing. And often they're helping these people get an education and escape the poverty they're in. And they're helping them with their skin conditions and everything. They're doing really genuinely amazing work. And there is a link between the sun cream and the money they're earning that will have a direct contribution. And I only found that out by talking a lot with the client and the people it was affecting and understanding that. And I had to I just had a disagreement with their creative director because there wasn't much time. He wanted to get the work up because obviously it looks good in your portfolio and all that. But I just felt this is a massive opportunity. And I think if we lead with something more interesting, more human, more emotive, I think we'll have a bigger impact. And that pushing against the grain because you're remembering who's this for and what they're doing, it was really pivotal. And I mean, the knock-on effect of all of that was it was so much more effective. It generated, I think, when we compared the sales, it was something like 4,000% increase in sales. We got a partnership with the United Nations, talks with Sesame Street about creating an albino Muppet. And the best bit was always at the end where on World Albinism Day, they launched the campaign in Times Square. So immediately you're getting noticed, you're combining it with a digital campaign. And we were the first company to feature a model with albinism in Times Square with Deandra Forrest, who's a supermodel with albinism.
That's right.
And that's really great. But I always remember the thing was like the client was there in Times Square and he said that one of the mums came up to him crying and she was like, for the first time in my life, I don't have to worry about my daughter because to see someone with albinism in such a prominent location tells me that the world is becoming more accepting of her condition. And that's a huge relief to me. And you kind of go, there now you're having a meaningful impact that really matters, not only in raising funds to save people in Africa, but then here domestically you're really making a difference. And that would have only come about because I was prepared to fight for the idea and because I asked the people. And so for me it was a bit like we did the A/B test, you had your campaign, it was fine, not much happened. We did ours, it gathered momentum, it had a much bigger impact. I worked with some really great people on it. I was very fortunate, but it taught me the lesson that I think it's worth. There's always usually something more emotive hiding that's going to have that cut through. And it's about finding that and then amplifying that and telling people, because people typically respond more to creativity and humanity than they do to sort of efficiency and automation and, what looks nice. And so that for me is not a bugbear, but I just think if you're going to make an impact, you've got to make people emotional. Because I can swipe through so much stuff on my phone, like Olivia and I send memes to each other all day long, but I don't know what I've watched because it hasn't made, like sometimes it just doesn't make an impression. And with ads, they're so skippable nowadays, you kind of feel it's just about finding the story and the emotion behind it. So for the brand building aspect, that's a big part of it for me.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. I just had that visual of that campaign being up in Times Square and just people looking at it in awe. When you're working with clients, whether they're sort of, solopreneurs or whether they're the big brands, is there a common misconception about branding and sort of like changing their creative to elevate it in some way?
I don't think many people understand what branding is. Like even people who do branding struggle to explain it because it's such a kind of weird, broad thing. But I think probably it's the misconception that we can just change the look. And if we look different, we'll get attention and stand out, if you know what I mean. So it's like we can give you a makeover, but it's the thing of, like with anything, you just need a bit more thought into the strategy. So why are you doing it? What has changed? Who are you targeting? And that's the thing of, I think it feels like on the surface level, you can just change the colours and the typeface and the logo and you've rebranded and it looks better, but you haven't fundamentally fixed the things and the problems in the business. And that's with anything, a lot of that comes about from getting buy-in from everyone involved and often the staff understanding why they're doing it. And I found that in the hotel, I was really guilty of this because unless anyone bothered to ask me what I was hoping to achieve, I wouldn't say anything. It just stayed in my head. And so you kind of go, I didn't even print this out. I didn't even mention it to the staff. It took me a while to kind of tell them what was the point. And my thing was always, I want everyone who stays here to have such a nice time that not only do they want to come back, but they want to bring their friends. Whatever you do is either contributing to that or it's not. And that can be quite abstract, but it basically means if you look after people and go a bit beyond, I think they'll want to come back. And because we relied on word of mouth, and that was our main thing, it worked very well. But I had to really make an effort to articulate that more. So I learned from that if you are rebranding or building your brand, talking about who you serve, why you serve them, how you help them, and letting everyone know, it makes it far more. It's probably a lot of the purpose work that you've probably heard of. It gives it a lot more credibility and stability if you have a bigger reason beyond the service or product you're selling.
And I imagine when it comes to sort of small to medium-sized business owners, is there more of an education around that rather than the sort of larger brands?
I think probably because they're selling something they're passionate about, and they're able to make money at it. So kind of that becomes the priority, which is great. It's not the thing I've always said is you don't always have to have like a really worthy purpose to do what you do. The vulnerability is if someone else came into your industry. So if you're running a coffee shop and you're just competitive and you do nice coffee, and another coffee shop comes in and they have a really strong purpose as to what they stand for and what their coffee contributes to and what they're all about, any of your customers that like that will gravitate to them because of the purpose. And the way you're going to get them back, if you can, is probably to try and reduce your prices, or like you're going to be in a battle to win them over because they feel a sense of satisfaction aligning with that business, because by supporting that business, it's an extension of them contributing to a worthy cause. And that's the difference. So with the NYDG thing, it was, if I buy their sun cream, yes, it's expensive, but actually I know where the money's going and I feel good about that because I'm involved in something making a difference, versus an alternative sun cream that might be great and a bit cheaper. It's kind of, and that's the vulnerability. So it is important. And there probably always is a reason. I can normally find a reason that inspired the business. There's usually someone or an event or a moment that has happened that has inspired that spark to kind of get going, you know?
Yeah. And as you were talking, I was thinking, God, there's a lot of trust that probably a client doesn't necessarily know that they would have to give to you, in order to sort of not just talk surface level, to be able to, I suppose, from a small to medium-sized business mentality is, you know, really why at the core. And so much of that is for want of a better word, at a cellular level, it's quite emotional why someone might start their business to help serve others. Not everybody, I appreciate, but quite, I would imagine people who are serving others start because of a particular change in their lives. I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day who was in trades, and you know, he was very emotional about why he started what he started. So it really does depend on the person. But I imagine that they would have to give their trust to you, and you very well open the floor nicely for that to happen. Probably more than they expect.
Yeah, it's as you say, you have to be delicate because when it's emotive, people can react in different ways. I always feel that. So like there's a client I work with called Sequoia, and Donna's amazing. I love Donna. She's awesome. And when we were doing her signature service stuff, I wanted to understand why she wanted to get into HR and what was the thing she was doing. And she kept talking about this lady, Claire, who was her first kind of mentor, who was so good at building culture. So she did HR as well. She's since retired, but like did it in a way that it never felt like official or strict, but she was actually able to empower people, and they really loved working because of what she was doing. She'd put people in better positions. She'd talk to everyone. And so when Donna started her HR firm, her kind of ethos was like, I want to do the same. I don't want to be a contract person who's just thought of for hiring and firing. I want to go, well, actually, the flip side of that is if I can, instead of firing someone, can we put them in another department where they're more happy? Can we empower people, train people, work with people to actually get a better culture and a better environment. And when we worked out, well, if Claire inspired you to get into this because of the way she did it, we managed to turn her process into, we used the Claire letters to spell Claire as she explains the 6 steps of her process. So for me, the nice synergy is when she explains the process, she tells the story of Claire, which reinforces your belief, like, wow, this person's really invested. It helps her remember the steps, and then she can explain it all. It seems to dovetail really nicely. So for me, I think it's also, it's unique to you. So if you can find that reason, you can't be copied. And that's like anything from naming, whatever the big reason is, that can inform so much. And I think people can relate to that. We've all had wonderful teachers, parents, family members who've taken the time to inspire us. So I think that's, really powerful to find that.
You mentioned signature service, and I think we should bring this into the conversation. I went on your signature service program a couple of weeks ago and loved it. Would you be able to shed some light on what that is and sort of why you started that?
Yeah, sure. So the big thing, I started it a few years ago, quite a while ago, because whenever a client would come to me and rebrand, I was very aware that they're spending quite a lot of money. And unless they've got a reason to rebrand or they've worked on a marketing strategy, often you can rebrand and not much changes. You have made a lot of progress behind the scenes, but unless you're going to, like I said, talk about it, inform people, you can't monetize it easily or quickly. And I was very conscious of that. And I felt, wouldn't it be great to give them a product or service they could launch with to coincide with the rebrand, to give them a bit of marketing buzz. So even if you're not into marketing, you at least have something to talk about. And I remember being in a networking meeting and there were 3 accountants in the room. And I remember thinking, if I had to choose a new accountant, I'd probably go, well, why should I choose you? And I'd imagine all of them would have gone, well, I've been doing it for this long, or like, we're the cheapest, or they wouldn't have a good reason. And I felt like, if I can give them a service they can launch, which is aimed at their perfect audience, to say, we're all great, but we offer the thing that you want, and we made it for you, and it has this, this, and this. And so that was the whole point, was if I can find that information, distill it into a service you can deliver that's scalable and ownable, you can always lead with that in however you talk about yourself. And for the people you've built it for, they'll totally get it, because quite often it's the little 1% of things that you do differently that compound, so it becomes a no-brainer for picking you. And that was the goal. So the signature service is very much like McDonald's has a Big Mac. It's like, I can only get this from you, and it's built for me. So if that's who you're trying to serve, it makes everything really straightforward. And so now, as part of the process of the workshop, I will interview you about you and your business and understand that. And then I'll go and interview usually one of the clients you've worked with, and then someone you haven't worked with. And I'm going to take a 360 view on everything, consolidate the information, and then present it back to you in a very flattering way to say, this is where you're aligned. They love this, and you're very happy talking about that. Here's another area where you're less aligned, where I think you can actually save time and resources communicating this, because they're not, interested as much. But here's the big opportunity, and it's that, but sort of the backbone of continue doing this, stop doing this, and start doing this. And the start bit is the bit where we work out what that could look like. I give you ideas for sort of surprise and delight, so the hospitality thing of how can we do things differently, and then we put that all into a process that you can deliver. And then the goal would be, if you're happy with that, I just take it back to your clients and go, this is what we came up with. Does this work for you? What would you change about it? And we build it with them, which, helps both validate it and reduce risk. And then once they've said they love it, you can just test it with a case study with one of them and start rolling it out.
Yeah, what I loved about that process, there were many things. I love the fact that, you were willing to speak to people who were my target audience, people who had worked with me. And also they're more likely to give up certain parts of information that they wouldn't necessarily tell me.
Yes, I'm independent, so I come with no baggage, so they can be quite honest with me.
You're like an auditor.
Yes, but even just trying to get a meeting with some people, if they think I'm selling something, they'll say no. But if you say, well, no, I just want a quick chat, have you got 15 minutes?
Yeah.
They'll always go, oh, that's fine. And that 15 minutes will turn into an hour because you're just chatting. And years of being a hotel manager means I can talk to people quite easily. And that's the bit where I'm trying to understand what are the things that they're saying. And that's why it's really nice, as you know, because I'll spot things, then you'll go, oh, and a lot of people have said they like to be told what they're doing well. So there's a sense of like relief of like, oh, I'm doing some stuff well, but then I didn't spot that, and I can see there's an opportunity in that, and that's really good for people.
Yeah, I loved that part, and it was, you know, great insight for me. What I also loved, you had, you know, I got your attention on and your eyes on my business, and I think I've said this to you before, like, I don't think people realise like the expertise that are coming your way, but what I also realised was the other perspectives in the room, that ability to talk about your own business in front of people who haven't got a clue what you do and who you are. And that screams volumes purely because you're always going to be talking to people who don't know you. And when you are getting insights, and, you know, someone even said to me, my goodness, it's so good to be here because I actually didn't know the depth of the work that you do. And that wasn't just to me. That's how I also felt about others in the room. You know, someone's just, you know, you think of a mortgage broker and you've got a preconceived idea. You think of a coach, you've got a preconceived idea. And actually, there's a great USP to everybody's business that once you start to flesh it out in front of each other, you go, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I get why your business is unique and people come to you. It's because of this. And now I know, A, who I want to go to, and B, who I can refer to you. So it was a really lovely way of really getting to know not only a different business, but different people and the way that they approach their business as well. And I loved the summary that was done at the end. So it was a really eye-opener, I would say, an experience, and it really helped me in my business.
Yeah, it surprised me, if I'm honest, because I knew that people would kind of, they all knew each other to a certain extent anyway, so that made things a lot easier. But there was a consistent feedback of that. I think they felt, again, like it was kind of nice to have multiple people give an opinion. It was always very respectful. And then you could feel like you could help other people, because there's, you know, the sort of, I'm not sure the 6 steps to Kevin Bacon or whatever it's called, but within the room, we've all used each other's services either directly or indirectly. And you realize you've got a lot of blind spots about how you should talk about your business, or what, more importantly, what other people prioritize about your business. And that, I think that's been the big thing, is people have had that revealed, and that's really rewarding. And it's intriguing to watch people do their 1 minute afterwards, because I can see that they're trying to sort of fit in bits we've covered, and I can see them name dropping things. So it's resonating. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's really rewarding for me to see that, and to help them find that is great. And then, like I said, the fact that people enjoy it so much is really nice as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun approach to learning more about yourself and your own business. So if you're listening and you feel like your brand needs a little bit of a spruce, I highly recommend the Signature Service Workshop by Thad.
Yeah, thank you.
But that I'm conscious of time, and I know that we can speak forever. So is there anything that I haven't asked you that I think that you feel is quite important to say at this point?
No, I know you've done a very good job. I think I would probably say I tend to feel as increasingly people sort of lean into technology and everything becomes remote, I think the opportunity is in the human stories and the human connection. So the things I notice that don't feel like marketing or brand building that do well have an element of that in them. And it's often because everyone is optimizing for efficiency and automation and processes, and we can do it remotely. I think if you're building your brand, every interaction is a one-on-one experience from the customer's point of view. making an emphasis to really put a lot of priority into making that enjoyable for both your team and the people, it goes such a long way. And I think if you're able to share those stories and make people emotional, I know that they remember them. That's why I always share stories, because I could talk to you about logos and branding and all these things which are more technical, but I find that people, they like the stories, they remember the stories, and I'm thinking long term, if they remember me when they've left the room, that's enough. I'm doing something right, sort of thing. So yeah, I think just putting the emphasis on being bold with your creativity. I know that I like Rory Sutherland, and he said, when you act logically, you end up in the same place as your competition. And there's a thing called Hotelling's law, which says that it's sort of restaurants and groups and political parties, they all kind of start off quite different, but they all start imitating each other to try and grab each other's customers. And in the end, they all just homogenize into the same thing. And then the opportunity is to be completely different, because that's what people crave.
Yeah, I love that. It kind of resonates. Last year, I started working on different ways of looking at my year. And I know that there's a few coaches that kind of choose a word of the year, but I have a phrase. And after kind of being in this industry for, years and sort of trying to follow and fit in and just see people who are working on their business quite successfully, and they have their own blueprint that they want to give to you and all of this sort of stuff. Back at the beginning of 2025, my saying, and it's been my saying ever since, is I'm doing it my way. And that, I think that's really hugely important, is everybody's business is different, and it's important that you get to do it your way. But yeah, Thad, where can people find you?
Yep. Well, they can find me. They can go to my website, thadcox.co.uk, or probably LinkedIn is... I'm not great on LinkedIn, but you can certainly, there aren't many Thad Coxes on there, so that would be easy to find me, or just on Instagram. So yeah, please reach out.
And can they find your signature service on your website?
Yeah, you can inquire for that. We've got a wait list for the next one going up. So the best thing to do is to just message me, and I'll let you know when the next workshop is. So yeah, please come along. I'd love to have them.
All right, brilliant. Thank you, Thad. Thanks for spending some time with me.
Amazing. Thank you.